Alrighty, hello biology students. The purpose of this video is to go over what are macromolecules. So you should have done some research on macromolecules already. These are going to be your concrete notes, so make sure you have your note sheet out in front of you so you can take notes on these. If my computer will let me change. There we go. So all compounds in the world can be classified into two broad categories, which you might remember from chemistry last year. Those being organic compounds. Organic compounds contain both carbon and hydrogen. You can probably guess the other one, inorganic compounds, which is everything else. So in order for something to be considered organic, it must have carbon and hydrogen. So almost everything in your body is an organic compound. So that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today, is the organic compounds that compose your body. So there are four main organic molecules which are called macromolecules, macro meaning large. So these are large molecules in your body. So just some other terminology you will need to know is a monomer. A monomer is a small thing that's used to build a polymer, because mono means one. So like mono-y mono, one versus one. A monomer is something very small. Whereas a polymer is many monomers, because poly means many. It's a bunch of monomers hooked together. So it's like a chain of monomers. And then macro means large, like I said. Just to go back to help you remember this a little bit more, if you can think of Legos, an individual Lego block is a monomer, and then when you put all those Legos together to make some sort of object, that's your polymer made of little individual monomer Legos. So, like I said, there's four main types of macromolecules found in living organisms. Carbohydrates, which you know what those are. Lipids, which means fats. Proteins, you've all heard of proteins, and nucleic acids, which is probably the new one. And we're going to talk about each of those in some more detail. So, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are composed of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen atoms. So like sugar, for example, is a carbohydrate. A carbohydrate is any type of sugar. Anything with breads or anything like that is a carbohydrate. And glucose is C6H12O6, which you'll need to know later in this unit. Okay, the main function of a carbohydrate is it's your energy source, okay? So you get all of your major energy, you get quick energy from your carbohydrates that you eat. It's broken down for energy. You all know that when you eat a bunch of sugar, you get super energized super fast, but then you eventually crash because your body runs out of those quick sugars. But you're breaking down sugar to make energy for your body. Okay, and there's different types of carbohydrates, and this is where things get a little tricky with the terminology. So the first type of carbohydrate is what's called a monosaccharide. Remember what mono means? It means one. So a monosaccharide is a simple sugar. It's just one sugar, and they're the monomers of a carbohydrate. So a monosaccharide is the monomer of a carbohydrate. A disaccharide then is two, di meaning two monosaccharides hooked together. It's two simple sugars hooked together. Okay, so a monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. A disaccharide is two monosaccharides hooked together. And then a polysaccharide is a bunch of sugars hooked together. It's a long chain of sugars. Lipids. Lipids are our next macromolecule we're going to talk about. Just to backtrack a little bit too, I told you what a monomer and a polymer was. Each of the macromolecules we talk about is going to have an associated monomer and polymer that you will need to know. So basically a monomer and a polymer are just what makes up that that macromolecule, if that makes sense. So a lipid then is a fat, an oil, a wax. Generally not super healthy things. They don't dissolve in water. And their main function is long-term energy storage. Okay, so energy storage. Your body isn't regularly breaking down fats unless they need them. So if you put your body, when you're eating healthy, you try to limit your carbohydrates because it forces your body to feed off your fats so that you can lose weight. Another function of lipids is this is structural support in membranes, so it gives the body support, and they also serves as a starting materials for reactions in the body. Helps get things started. That's a Yoda made of butter. So, monomer of a lipid is a fatty acid. So a fatty acid is just a chain of fats. A fatty acid makes up a lipid. So those are the monomers of lipids. They're fatty acids. Proteins. So is a protein is composed of carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Remember that oxygen was used instead of nitrogen to compose carbohydrates, but proteins are made with nitrogen. The main function of a protein is to construct materials for your body parts, such as your hair, your skin, your nails, and your blood. So proteins help make things for your body. They also give you strength. Proteins also help protect the body against different pathogens, so they help to keep you healthy. It's important to have proteins in your diet so that they can help to keep you functioning in day-to-day activities. And the last function of a protein is its long-term energy storage. So proteins are your last resort for energy in your body. Of course, your first resort is your carbohydrates. It's your quick energy. If you have a deficit of carbs, your body's going to start breaking down lipids to get its energy. If you have no more fat left, it is going to eat at your proteins for energy. Ideally, you would never get to that stage. You never want your body to feed off the proteins that you have. That's not healthy. So they're there in case you need it, but generally your body will never use proteins for energy, to use energy. It just stores it there. The monomer of proteins are what are called amino acids. They're the little tiny building blocks that make up most proteins, which you probably remember talking about back in chemistry. We're going to talk about those more in the coming units and how amino acids can combine to make different things. So there's 20 different kinds of amino acids in your body. And they just hook together in different ways to make different proteins. Just some other notes to add in here is an enzyme. So an enzyme helps control chemical reactions by acting as a catalyst. So if you think back to chemistry, we often talked about reactions and how you need a certain amount of energy to make a reaction happen. An enzyme is something in your body that helps to lower the amount of energy needed to start a reaction. So basically, an enzyme speeds up a reaction by lowering its activation energy. It acts as a catalyst. So an enzyme is a catalyst. And like I said, activation energy is just how much energy you need to start a reaction. Enzymes work in kind of a lock and key mechanism. You don't need to know too much about this right now, but as you can see that there's this substrate and an active site, what happens is enzymes bind in here to make things happen quicker. We'll talk about more of that later. Our last macromolecule we're going to talk about in this unit is what's called a nucleic acid. A nucleic acid stores your genetic information in the cell. Okay, so where do you think nucleic acids are found? A nucleus, because they're storing genetic information. And as you know, our body stores that information as DNA. Another new term is nucleotides. So nucleotides are the building blocks of nucleic acid. They're the monomer of a nucleic acid. And a nucleotide consists of a base, a phosphate, and a sugar. So if we look at this picture here in the bottom right corner, you can see that we have a base here, a phosphate, and a sugar all hooked together to make up a nucleic acid. Like I said before, there's two main types of nucleic acid. There's DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, which you have in your cells, and then also RNA, which you also have in your body. It's just not your usable type of DNA. So DNA is, of course, your genetic information. RNA helps with protein synthesis, which we will talk about in further units. If you have any questions about this, make sure to reach out. Thank you.